Alright folks, welcome to the Jank Bank. Today we're going to be looking at Jund Soulflayer. Kind of interesting brew that I've been coming up with for about the last few weeks here. So the idea behind it being that most of the Soulflayer decks that you see end up having one issue. It's that you can't hardcast the creatures until way later. So this tries to solve that problem by providing a little bit more resilience to the deck, as well as some early game threats. So we'll start off with the mana base. Got 4 Blooming Marsh, got Forest, Swamp, those are the only basics we're working with here. Stomping Ground, a playset of Overgrown Tomb. Black-green is pretty much the most important mana combination we can get. Blood Crypt, 2 Bloodstained Mires, and 4 Verdant Catacombs. So we're running about 19 lands in this deck here. The next thing you'll notice is in the 1-drop slot, basically what we have is stuff that's enablers. So turn 1, usually we're going to go ahead and traverse, so we're going to go to get a second land to hand. Just make sure we have our mana fixing, especially with a deck that has so few lands. Or Faithless Looting, that's the other option, is we draw 2, discard 2, hopefully draw into a land for turn 2. Likely your first turn is going to start off with 1 to 2 lands in it, and that's going to have to be okay. In our 2-drop slot, we start getting some creatures that have abilities. Sylvan Caryatid, Defender, Hexproof. You'll notice that Soulflayer does not actually get those abilities. 0-3, taps for mana, so if we really need it, we have a blocker early game. It's kind of nice. Grizzly Salvage is going to be one of the ones that's probably the most interesting. It's 2 cost, black-green, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand, put the rest in your graveyard. So we have 2 ways in order to get Soulflayer working. So the first is that if you don't have it in your opening hand, you Grizzly Salvage your opponent's second end step, and go through the whole process, hopefully grab a Soulflayer out of that, and whatever you got into the graveyard at that point is pretty much what you're going to get. The other part of it is Lotleth Troll, pretty great little creature here. We got a Trampler that has discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Lotleth Troll, which is a great interaction actually with our Flamewake Phoenix, because if you can get it up to where it's a 4 power, you can immediately get Flamewake Phoenix back from the graveyard swinging in. As early, I've had it as turn 3, so that's pretty great. So if you don't have anything else, you're at least swinging in for 6 minimum. Has black, regenerate, Lotleth Troll. Just pretty solid card all around. Next up, we got Vampire Nighthawk. It's got 3 keyword abilities, which are just awesome. Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. This is actually a little bit better against things like Burn. Lifelink isn't super important in most of our games, because for the most part, we're going to be just absolutely annihilating our opponent by turn 3 with some hasty double strike, hexproof, indestructible thing. Next up we got Flamewake Phoenix. It's just a good synergy with the deck, really. Nice thing is our Soulflayer is a 4/4, so it is flying, haste, and Flamewake Phoenix attacks each combat if able. Its ferocious ability is at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may pay a red mana to return Flamewake Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. And of course, at that point, it'd just be tapped and attacking. We got Ronus the Indomitable, just a really solid card, especially with some of the other stuff in our deck. Death Touch, indestructible. Death Touch doesn't come into play too often, but the indestructible is what we're looking at here, and especially the ability to play it early and just get down a threat as quick as humanly possible. It can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. Again, Soulflayer, exactly power 4. 3, 2 and a green, another target creature gets +2/+0 and trample till end of turn. So worst case scenario, you're working at turn 4, you've got a Ronus sitting out on the battlefield, maybe a Flamewake Phoenix from your last turn after your opponent dismembers your Lotless Troll, and you pump your Flamewake Phoenix, and your Ronus can swing in with it. So, other 3 drops, we got Kolaghan's Command, just an all-around really staple card. We got 3 mana, 1 black-red, choose 2, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Great for getting back Soulflayer if your opponent actually manages to kill it, if you didn't manage to get hexproof on it the first time, or something like that. Target player discards a card, which means that, lucky enough, we can actually discard a card if we want to get a keyword ability on our Soulflayer. We can destroy target artifact, so it's just really good for that kind of stuff. So any graveyard hate, anything like that, it already works with it. And then it deals 2 damage to any target, so we're working against little creatures, things like that. Little blockers that our opponents are putting out there, basically. In the 4-drop slot, we have Hazaret the Fervent, indestructible haste, but can attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. We don't run into this too often. I think that more of the reason to play Hazaret is for both the indestructible and haste keywords. You don't end up attacking with it all that often. It does have a activated discard ability, 2 in a red, discard a card, deals 2 damage to each opponent, so that can be fairly relevant here and there. Also can get Hazaret down to the point where it can attack if you're really desperate late game. We got Thrun the Last Troll, good in any control matchups. You'll see we also have 1 in the sideboard. Can't be countered, has hexproof, 1 in a green to regenerate, 4/4, so also helps out our Flamewake Phoenix if that ends up being an issue. In our 5-drop slot, we've got one of my favorite creatures in this deck, actually. 3 green, red, flash 3/4 with double strike, vigilance, and haste with other creatures you control getting haste as well. Samet is just all around a really good card. I've hard casted it quite a few times, and it just does wonders. Your opponent has to eliminate it, or else it's just a huge issue. Also, even better on Soulflayer when it's getting something like flying and indestructible and hexproof. Just a great threat to put in our deck. And the namesake card, we've got Soulflayer 4 and 2 black with Delve. If you don't know what Delve is, it's basically you just exile cards from your graveyard to pay the colorless portion of the mana cost. And if a creature card with flying was exiled with Soulflayer's Delve ability, it gets flying. Same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. There are a couple we aren't really focusing on there. For instance, Reach I don't have too much issue with because we already have Flying. First Strike we don't deal too much with because we already have Double Strike, that kind of thing. And in our sideboard, we've got some good stuff here. Definitely not playing the budget build on this one, so 1 of Lightning Axe, deal with large creatures, still works as a discard spell, direct swap for Faithless Looting. 2 of Ancient Grudge to deal with artifacts, things like that, things that our Kolagons command. We just don't get it often enough in order to switch it out. 2 Sweltering Suns, because it hits almost none of our creatures, actually, and if we really need to, we can cycle it in order to delve out our Soulflayer, which is a great way to deal with that. Our second Thrun, 3 Leyline of the Void, deal with other graveyard-based decks, things like that. Got 2 Maelstrom Pulse in order to destroy non-land permanents, all of the permanents with the same name as that permanent, so it's really good against things like tokens, or if a deck tries to make multiple of something. Just all around a really good card. You're going up against things like ley lines that really easily gets them gone. Abrupt Decay, same idea, 3 or less instead of the any non-land permanent. And 2 Damping Spheres to deal with Tron and Combo. And that is our deck. We got Jund Soulflayer going on. My name is Jeremy, and this is the Jank Bank. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them, and have a great rest of your day.